I went to take care of my sick neighbor Apache. By morning, everyone asked what happened last night. Alex had always been the kind of person who noticed little things that others might ignore. A crooked fence, a bird struggling to get back to its nest, or a neighbor who didn't come out of the house for days. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the row of small houses on his street, Alex's attention was drawn to a familiar figure, Apache, his neighbor, who lived alone at the end of the lane. Apache had been sick for several days. From the look of him through the half-open window, he seemed weaker than usual, slouched in his chair, and his face pale under the fading sunlight. Alex hesitated for a moment, thinking about what he was about to do. It wasn't that he didn't want to help. He did. But sometimes people didn't like unexpected visitors, even if they were neighbors. Yet something about Apache's expression, the way he struggled to lift a cup of water to his lips, pulled at Alex's heart. There was no question. Tonight, he would go over and check on him. He quickly grabbed a small bag and packed it with essentials, some homemade soup in a tightly sealed container, a bottle of water, a few painkillers, and a blanket he thought might come in handy. He also tossed in a small flashlight, thinking it might help if the power went out. Though the neighborhood was quiet, the streets empty, Alex felt a small rush of nervous energy as he walked the familiar path to Apache's house. The evening air was crisp and smelled faintly of rain. Leaves rustled gently in the wind, and the distant hum of a car engine faded into silence. Alex's footsteps echoed softly on the pavement as he approached Apache's front gate. The house was modest, but it had character. Old wooden shutters that creaked in the wind, a small garden where Apache used to grow tomatoes, and a swing that hung from a sturdy oak tree in the yard. But tonight, the house seemed quieter than usual, almost holding its breath, as if aware of the night that was about to unfold. Alex knocked softly on the door. At first, there was no answer. Then, a weak shuffle sounded from inside, and the door creaked open. Apache stood there, his hair messy, eyes tired, and a faint cough escaping him. "Alex," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I didn't expect you," Alex smiled warmly. "I couldn't just leave you like this," he said. "I brought some soup. You need to eat something, okay?" Apache gave a small nod, his face softening slightly. He tried to step aside, but his legs trembled under him. Alex quickly moved to support him. "Take your time," he said. "We'll get you comfortable first." Inside, the house smelled faintly of medicine and something else, something Alex couldn't quite place. It was familiar, though, like old wood and a hint of rain. The living room was dimly lit by a single lamp which flickered occasionally, casting shadows that danced along the walls. Apache settled into his worn armchair, and Alex handed him the soup. "Here," he said gently. "Eat a little. It's not much, but it'll help." Apache took the spoon with shaky hands, managing a few bites before coughing again. Alex kept a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "Slowly," he said. "No rush." Once Apache had eaten, Alex moved around the room, tidying up slightly. He straightened a few cushions, folded a blanket neatly, and even lit a small candle on the table, just to make the room feel a little warmer. Apache watched him quietly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. "I'll stay with you tonight," Alex said finally, "just to make sure you're okay." Apache's eyes widened slightly. "You don't have to. It's late and I don't want to trouble you." Alex shook his head. "No trouble at all. We're neighbors. That's what we do. Besides," he hesitated, then smiled. "I think I owe you a little payback for all the times you've helped me fix things around my house." Apache chuckled faintly, a sound so soft it almost got lost in the quiet of the room. It wasn't much, but it was enough to tell Alex that his presence was appreciated. As the night deepened, Alex settled into a small chair beside Apache's armchair, the soup long finished, the medicine taken, and the blanket draped over both of them, as if to share a little warmth. They talked quietly, first about small things, how the weather had been, the neighbor's new cat, a minor argument over a fence post that had almost fallen in the storm last week. Then the conversation shifted. Apache spoke slowly, struggling with each word, about how tired he felt, about the nights when the world outside felt too loud and overwhelming, and how lonely the house had seemed since his partner had passed away a year ago. Alex listened, nodding occasionally, offering the occasional word of comfort. Outside, the wind grew stronger. The trees swayed and moaned under its pressure, and the old shutters rattled against the frames. Alex barely noticed. His focus was on Apache, on making sure he was comfortable, safe, and not alone. Every so often, Apache would drift off into a shallow sleep, only to wake coughing or muttering softly. Alex would be there, ready with water, a reassuring hand, or a gentle word. Hours passed in this quiet rhythm, the kind of slow, deliberate care that builds a connection between two people who might otherwise only exchange nods across the fence. Alex felt a deep satisfaction in helping someone, knowing he was making even a small difference in Apache's night. There was a strange, peaceful energy in the room, a sense of shared trust that made the dim lighting, the ticking clock, and the occasional groan of the old house feel like part of a larger, comforting pattern. At one point, Apache reached out and took Alex's hand briefly. "Thank you," he whispered, eyes glistening. I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." Alex squeezed his hand gently. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I'm just glad I'm here." And for a while everything was calm. The house seemed to settle into a quiet lull. Even the wind softened, rustling the leaves in a gentle, soothing way. Alex leaned back in his chair, feeling the warmth of the blanket and the quiet satisfaction of doing the right thing. But deep down, a small part of him wondered if the night would remain this peaceful. There was something about the house, about the way shadows seemed to linger a moment longer than they should, that made him alert, even as he tried to relax. Little did Alex know, this night would not remain ordinary for long. What began as a simple act of kindness, coming over to care for a sick neighbor, was about to take a turn that neither of them could have anticipated. But for now, in this quiet moment, with the house bathed in soft lamplight and the wind whispering outside, Alex simply focused on the task at hand, keeping Apache safe, comfortable, and not alone. The quiet rhythm of the evening gave Alex a sense of calm he hadn't expected. He thought the night would pass peacefully, just the two of them sitting in the dimly lit room, the occasional cough from Apache punctuating the silence. But as the hours stretched on and the darkness outside grew deeper, small, unsettling things began to catch Alex's attention. It started subtly. A faint creak from the upstairs floor, almost like someone had shifted a step, made him pause mid-sip of water. Alex glanced toward the ceiling, frowning. Apache, too tired to notice, muttered something in his sleep and shifted in the armchair. Alex shook his head, thinking it was just the house settling. Old houses often did that. But then the flickering of the lamp caught him off guard. The light danced along the walls in strange patterns, casting elongated shadows that seemed almost alive. Alex's heart beat a little faster, and he reminded himself to stay calm. "It's just the lamp," he whispered under his breath. "Nothing else?" He focused on Apache, checking to see if he was comfortable. The blanket was tucked around him, the soup eaten, and the medicine taken. All seemed normal. Yet a strange feeling lingered, a sense that the house was somehow aware of him. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. Alex couldn't tell in the darkness. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, a soft thud echoed. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct enough to make him freeze. His eyes scanned the room. Apache stirred, coughing slightly but didn't seem fully awake. Alex stood slowly, careful not to make noise, and walked toward the sound. The hallway leading to the kitchen was dark. Only the faint light from the living room reached it. As he stepped forward, he noticed the shadows shifting in a way that didn't seem natural. A cupboard door was slightly ajar, though he was sure he had closed it earlier. He reached out, gently pushing it back into place, and shrugged to himself. "Old house," he muttered, trying to sound confident. Then he heard it, a whisper, almost too faint to catch. He froze. "Hello?" he called softly, his voice steady but cautious. No response came, only silence and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Alex felt his heart tighten. He was used to helping people, fixing things, and staying calm in emergencies, but something about this night felt different. Returning to Apache, he tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. Maybe it's just my imagination, he told himself. He sat back in the chair, keeping one eye on Apache and the other on the dim hallway. For a while, everything remained quiet. Then came the coughing, louder, more urgent this time. Alex leaned forward, offering water. Apache's eyes fluttered open, wild and confused. "Alex," he whispered.
I can't. It's moving." Alex's brows furrowed.
"What's moving?" he asked gently, trying not to alarm him. "The shadows," Apache muttered, struggling to sit up. They aren't normal." Alex's pulse quickened. He looked around the room. The shadows cast by the lamp on the wall did seem different, elongated, swirling in shapes that didn't match the objects that cast them. The wind rattled the shutters, making the movement even more pronounced. "It's okay," Alex said, reaching out to steady Apache. "It's just the lamp and the wind." Nothing more. Apache's hand gripped his arm tightly. "No, you don't understand. They move when you're not looking directly at them. They follow you." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to reassure him, to tell him it was all imagination, but the unease in the air was impossible to ignore. He made sure the windows were locked, checked the doors, and even peeked around the corners, but saw nothing unusual. Then, just when he began to relax slightly, a louder sound came from the back of the house. A bang, like something heavy falling to the floor. Alex jumped, startled, and quickly moved toward the kitchen. The sound had come from near the pantry. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that it could be anything: a falling dish, a loose shelf, the wind blowing something over. When he reached the kitchen, everything appeared normal. Plates stacked neatly, the counter clear, nothing out of place. He frowned, trying to make sense of the noise. As he turned to leave, he noticed the faintest mark on the wall. A smudge, like a handprint. He frowned again, stepping closer to inspect it. Before he could react further, Apache's voice called from the living room. "Alex! Watch the window!" Alex spun around, heart racing. He moved back quickly and saw, to his astonishment, that the curtains fluttered as if caught by a strong breeze, though all windows were closed. Shadows from the swaying fabric stretched across the floor in strange, twisting shapes. Alex swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the night pressing in on him. He went back to Apache and knelt beside him. "We'll get through this," he said firmly. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." Apache nodded weakly, gripping his hand. I'm scared," he admitted. "I haven't seen it like this before." Alex offered a small smile, trying to steady both of them. "I know, but you're not alone. I'm here." Minutes passed, and gradually the shadows seemed to settle. The wind softened, and the flickering of the lamp became more steady. Alex allowed himself a small sigh of relief. But he didn't sit back completely. There was still an edge in the air, a sense that the night had not yet revealed everything it held. Then, just as Alex began to think things were calming down, a noise from the staircase made him freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and definitely not his own. He glanced at Apache, who was staring wide-eyed at the ceiling. "Alex, someone's upstairs," he whispered. Alex shook his head slightly. "I don't think so," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The footsteps continued echoing faintly through the house. Alex stood, moving toward the stairs cautiously. Each step creaked under his weight. The shadows along the wall seemed to lean toward him, following every movement. Reaching the top, he saw nothing at first, just a hallway lined with closed doors. He moved slowly, hand brushing against the walls for guidance. Then he noticed it, a faint glow coming from under the door at the end of the hallway. He approached it carefully, listening. A soft murmur reached his ears. Words he couldn't understand. The voice was quiet, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. Alex's heart raced, but he forced himself to focus. He reached for the doorknob, turning it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing an empty room bathed in faint, unnatural light. Alex blinked, trying to adjust. The room looked normal at first. Furniture in place, no sign of anyone. But the air felt different, heavier somehow. A chill ran through him, and he realized that the house, quiet and peaceful before, had taken on a life of its own. He backed away slowly, shutting the door, and returned to Apache. I think everything's okay, he said, though he wasn't entirely sure. Apache's eyes were wide, and his grip on the blanket tightened. Alex sat down again, trying to calm himself. He didn't speak for a long time, letting the silence stretch between them. Outside, the wind had died down, leaving only the occasional rustle of leaves. But inside, the memory of the strange sounds and flickering lights lingered. Finally, Apache spoke again. "Thank you for staying," he said softly. "I don't know what I would have done if you weren't here." Alex nodded, offering a reassuring squeeze of his hand. "We'll make it through the night," he said. "I promise." They settled back into the quiet routine, watching the dim light of the lamp flicker softly. Alex knew the night wasn't over, though. Something had shifted in the house, in the air, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the hours ahead would hold more surprises. But for now, he focused on keeping Apache comfortable, his mind alert and his heart steady. The night stretched on, long and heavy, as Alex sat beside Apache, waiting and watching, ready for whatever came next. The house had grown quieter for a while, but Alex knew that calm was only temporary. He could feel it, the tension in the air, the way shadows clung to the corners, and the faint, unexplained movements that seemed to follow every step he took. Even Apache, who had been resting quietly in his chair, now seemed tense, eyes darting toward the dark corners of the room whenever a soft creak or whisper reached his ears. Alex tried to reassure him. "It's okay," he said gently, keeping his voice calm. "It's just the house. Old houses make noises like this all the time. There's nothing to worry about." Apache's hand clutched the blanket tighter, knuckles white. "It's not just the house," he murmured, his voice low and shaky. "Daniel, something is here. I can feel it. I've felt it before, but never this strong." Alex's mind raced. He wanted to comfort Apache, but he could no longer deny that something unusual was happening. The air felt heavier, almost charged, and the shadows on the walls seemed to stretch and twist as if they had a life of their own. Suddenly, a soft thump echoed from the far corner of the living room. Alex's head whipped toward the sound. The lamp flickered violently, throwing jagged shapes across the walls. He clenched his jaw and took a step forward, trying to appear confident for Apache's sake. "Stay here," he said firmly. "I'll check it out." "No," Apache whispered, panic rising in his voice. "Don't go. Please, Alex, just stay with me." Alex hesitated. He hated leaving Apache alone, especially now, but he also knew he couldn't ignore whatever was causing the noise. He took a deep breath and moved toward the source, careful to tread softly on the creaking floorboards. The corner of the room was dark, filled with shadows that shifted as he approached. At first he saw nothing, just the familiar furniture, the rug, and the walls. But then he noticed a subtle movement near the window. The curtains were drawn tight, yet a faint shape seemed to flicker behind them, as if someone, or something, was watching. Alex froze. He told himself it was just the wind or a trick of the light. But his instinct screamed otherwise. The shape moved again, and this time it was unmistakable. A shadow that didn't belong, shifting independently of anything in the room. Heart pounding, Alex stepped back, feeling a wave of fear wash over him. For the first time, he admitted silently to himself that this night was far from ordinary. Something had entered the house, something that was not meant to be ignored. Back by Apache's chair, the older man sat rigid, eyes wide. "Did you see it?" he asked, voice trembling. "It's here. It's real." Alex swallowed hard. I think I did," he said slowly. keeping his voice even. "But we need to stay calm. We need to be careful. Let's just stay together, okay?" Apache nodded, though the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. The two of them sat close together, sharing the blanket, listening. The house seemed to hum with a strange energy, the air thick and heavy. Each creak of the floor, each flicker of the lamp felt magnified, making their hearts race. Time passed slowly. Minutes, maybe hours. Alex couldn't tell. The night stretched on, long and unrelenting, each sound amplified by the silence that surrounded them. Then, without warning, a louder bang echoed from the kitchen. Something had fallen, or been thrown, though Alex saw nothing when he glanced towards the room. "Stay here," he said to Apache. "I'll check it out." "No!" Apache's voice cracked. "Alex!" "Don't! You don't understand!" Alex hesitated, torn between the need to investigate and the desire to keep Apache safe, but the curiosity mixed with a sense of responsibility won. He moved cautiously toward the kitchen, flashlight in hand, muscles tense, ready for anything. The kitchen was empty, or at least it appeared so. Cabinets were closed, the counters clear, and the floor spotless. Alex's gaze moved around the room, looking for any clue, any sign of what had caused the noise, and then he noticed it. A small, almost imperceptible trail of objects shifted ever so slightly, as if someone had walked across the room in the dark. Alex's breath caught. What could this be?" he whispered to himself. Then the sound came again. A soft, dragging noise coming from the hallway that led to the staircase. Alex's stomach twisted. Whoever, or whatever, was in the house, it was moving. Slowly, deliberately, he retreated towards the living room, careful not to make a sound. Apache was still sitting, eyes wide, holding the blanket tightly around him. "Alex," he whispered. "It's coming closer." Alex swallowed hard. He could feel the fear rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "It's okay," he said, though even he struggled to believe it. "We'll be fine. Just stay calm. Stay close." And then it happened. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, a cold chill sweeping over them like a gust of icy wind. The candle on the table flickered and went out, plunging the room into near darkness. Shadows seemed to stretch and move faster now, coiling along the walls in shapes that Alex couldn't recognize. Apache whimpered, pressing closer to him. "Alex, I can't. Alex held him tightly. "It's okay. I'm right here. I won't let anything happen to you." A sudden crash from upstairs made them both jump. Something had fallen, or been thrown. Alex could hear it skidding across the floor, bouncing slightly before coming to a stop. He didn't dare look. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then a whisper, faint but distinct, reached their ears. Alex couldn't understand the words, but the tone was urgent, almost warning them. He squeezed Apache's hand, trying to reassure him, even as his own heart raced. Suddenly, Apache bolted upright, eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave. Now," he shouted. Alex hesitated. Leaving the house in the dark with something unseen moving around was dangerous. But Apache's panic was genuine, and he knew he couldn't refuse. "Okay," he said firmly. "We'll get out safely. Follow me." They moved carefully toward the front door. Every step was slow, deliberate, ears straining for any sound. The shadows seemed to twist and bend around them, the house alive in a way that felt almost conscious. Alex held the doorknob, heart pounding, and counted to 3 before turning it. The door opened easily, and a gust of cold night air rushed in. The outside world felt impossibly bright compared to the darkness and tension inside. They stepped out, shivering, and Alex made sure the door was locked behind them. Apache leaned against him, trembling. I've never seen anything like that," he said. It felt alive." Alex nodded, trying to catch his breath. "I know," he said quietly. "I felt it too. But we're safe now. We'll figure this out." They stood together in the quiet street, the night stretching endlessly around them. The house behind them loomed dark and still, but Alex knew that whatever had been inside, whatever had made the night so strange and terrifying, was not gone. It had left its mark, a memory that would linger long after the morning light. For now, though, they had survived the night, and as Alex guided Apache back to the safety of his chair, both of them wrapped in a blanket, a small sense of relief settled over them. They didn't know what the rest of the night would bring, but they were together, and that made all the difference. The house remained silent, for now. But deep in the shadows in the corners of the room that the lamplight didn't reach, something waited. Something patient, watching, knowing that the night was far from over. Alex couldn't see it, but he could feel it, the presence of the unknown, lingering and alive, as the clock ticked toward the hours that would change everything. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, each minute heavier than the last. Alex and Apache sat together in the living room, wrapped tightly in a blanket, hearts pounding in unison. The earlier tension had evolved into something deeper, something that felt alive and unpredictable, like the house itself had awakened. Every shadow, every small noise now carried a sense of purpose, and Alex could feel it pressing closer with each passing second. "Alex," Apache whispered, his voice trembling. "It's moving again. I can feel it. It's in the house." Alex nodded, swallowing the fear rising in his chest. "I know. We have to stay calm and stay together. Nothing will hurt us if we stay alert." No sooner had the words left his mouth than the lamp flickered violently, then went out, leaving them in near total darkness. The wind outside seemed to pick up again, rattling the shutters with sudden force. Shadows twisted and stretched across the room, as though some unseen hand were reaching out from the corners. Alex's heart raced, but he forced himself to focus. "We'll get through this," he said quietly, though his own words felt fragile in the overwhelming darkness. Then came the sound, a low, dragging noise that began from the far corner of the room and slowly moved toward them. Alex could hear it clearly, each step deliberate, heavy, and almost alive. He grabbed the flashlight, flicking it on, the beam cutting a narrow path through the shadows. The room appeared empty, yet the noise continued, moving closer with an impossible precision. Apache clutched his hand, trembling. "Alex, it's right behind us," he whispered. Alex turned slowly, swinging the flashlight toward the sound. Nothing was there, but the shadows on the walls seemed to move independently of the light, twisting and writhing like dark smoke. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, more insistent. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the kitchen. Something had toppled over, perhaps a chair, a pot, but no, one was in sight. The sound echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls and floor. Alex's pulse skyrocketed. "We need to move," he said firmly. "Stay close to me. Don't panic." They moved toward the front door, but just as Alex reached for the knob, a loud bang shook the house from above. Footsteps, heavy and erratic, pounded across the floor upstairs. The ceiling creaked under the weight of the invisible presence, and dust rained down from the corners. Alex froze for a moment, fear threatening to paralyze him. He glanced at Apache, who was pale, eyes wide, gripping his arm. I can't stay here," Apache whispered. "We have to leave now." Alex nodded, tightening his grip on his neighbor's hand. "Okay, let's go." They moved quickly down the hallway, every step cautious, yet urgent. Shadows shifted around them, as if following, sometimes stretching toward their feet, sometimes disappearing at the last moment. The air grew colder, each breath sharp in their lungs. Alex's mind raced. He had never felt fear like this, not in any emergency, not even when he had climbed roofs to fix broken tiles. This was different. Suddenly the sound of glass breaking rang out from the back of the house. Alex spun around, flashlight illuminating the living room. A window had shattered, fragments of glass littering the floor. The curtains swayed violently, though the air inside the house was still. Something had moved with impossible force. Apache gasped. It's everywhere!" he shouted, panic rising in his voice. Alex grabbed him, pulling him closer.
Stay calm. We're almost out.
Just a few more steps. The front door was now in sight, but as Alex reached for it, a heavy thud sounded behind them, then another, then another. The house seemed to pulse with movement, every corner alive with unseen energy. The shadows now seemed to have weight, pressing against the walls, reaching toward them with a slow, deliberate intent. Alex's hand shook as he turned the doorknob. The door creaked open, and a gust of cold night air poured in. The outside world, quiet and still, was a stark contrast to the chaos inside. He pulled Apache through, closing the door quickly behind them. For a moment they both stood there, gasping, hearts racing, grateful for the solid walls between them and whatever was inside. But the house was not finished. From the upper windows a shadowy figure, or perhaps a distortion of the darkness itself, seemed to watch them. Alex squinted, trying to make sense of it, but it disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Apache sank to the ground, shivering.
I've never felt anything like that, he said, voice trembling. It's
alive. Alex knelt beside him, trying to steady both their breathing. We're safe now.
Outside, we're safe. Minutes passed.
The wind softened, the trees no longer rattled, and the house behind them seemed to settle back into silence. But Alex knew better. Something had been there, something that had filled the rooms with movement and energy, something that had made the night feel alive. Then, as dawn began to lighten the sky, a strange calm settled over the street. The world outside remained quiet, almost serene, the kind of morning that made one forget the horrors of the night. Alex helped Apache back to his chair, making sure he was comfortable. The blanket wrapped around them both, they sat in silence, processing the night's events. Alex tried to explain it to himself. Perhaps it had been the wind, old furniture, shadows playing tricks, but deep down he knew that what they had experienced was far beyond the ordinary. Something unusual, something alive had moved through the house that night. Apache looked at him, eyes still wide, voice low. Do you think it's gone? Alex shook his head slowly. I don't know, but we survived it, and that's what matters. Whatever it was, it didn't follow us outside. They sat together, letting the early light fill the room, bringing a sense of safety and warmth back into the space. Alex could feel the tension in his muscles slowly easing, though he knew the memory of the night would remain with him forever. Then came a knock at the door. Both of them jumped. Alex moved cautiously to the door, peering through the peephole. Outside, the neighbor across the street stood, looking concerned. Is everything all right? The neighbor called. We heard noises all night. What happened? Alex paused, unsure how to answer. Apache remained quiet, gripping his hand tightly. He realized that the story of the night was impossible to explain fully. How could he tell anyone about shadows that moved on their own, whispers in empty rooms, or the cold that seemed alive? Alex opened the door slowly. It's a long night, he said carefully. Everything's fine now. We're okay. The neighbor nodded slowly, giving them a questioning look, then turned and walked away. Alex closed the door, leaning against it for support. He looked at Apache, who was breathing heavily but beginning to relax. We made it, Alex said quietly. We survived. Apache nodded, finally allowing himself to exhale fully. I can't believe it, he whispered. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. Thank you for staying with me.
Alex smiled faintly, though the exhaustion showed on his face.
You don't have to thank me, he said. I couldn't leave you alone tonight. Not after everything. As the sun rose higher, casting warm light through the windows, the house seemed to return to normal, or as close to normal as it could get after a night like this. The shadows no longer twisted unnaturally, the wind had calmed, and the silence was only broken by the occasional chirp of birds. But deep inside, Alex knew that the events of the night were real. Whatever had stirred inside that house, whatever had made the shadows move and whispered across the walls, it had left its mark. And while the immediate danger had passed, The memory of the night, the fear, and the strange presence would remain with both of them forever. They sat together watching the morning unfold, grateful for the simple comfort of daylight, warmth, and safety. The night had tested them, pushed them to the edge, and left them shaken. But it had also strengthened the bond between them. Alex knew that no matter what else might happen, they had faced the impossible together. And as the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds illuminating the house and the street beyond, Alex allowed himself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the worst of the night had passed. The first light of morning filtered softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow across the room. Alex sat in the chair beside Apache, still wrapped in the blanket, feeling the calmness of the new day settle around them. The horrors of the night, the shadows, the noises, the unexplainable events had passed, leaving only a lingering sense of awe and relief. Apache, exhausted but more composed, took a deep breath and looked around, as if trying to convince himself that everything was truly back to normal. Alex watched him carefully, making sure he was comfortable. "You did really well," he said quietly. "You stayed calm, even when it was scary. That takes a lot of strength." Apache managed a faint smile.
I don't know what to say.
"I've never been through anything like that. I can't even explain it."
You don't have to explain it, Alex replied. Some things are just beyond words.
"But what matters is that we made it through together." For a moment they sat in silence, listening to the quiet sounds of the neighborhood waking up, the distant hum of a car engine, birds chirping, and the occasional shout of a child from across the street. The world outside seemed almost untouched by the events of the night, serene and ordinary, though Alex knew the memory of the night would linger for both of them. Then came the soft knock at the door. Alex froze for a second, startled. The house had been quiet for hours, and now, at this early hour, someone was outside. He stood and moved cautiously to the door, peering through the peephole. Outside, several neighbors had gathered, their faces curious, some concerned. They looked as though they had barely slept, and all eyes were fixed on the house. Alex took a deep breath and opened the door slowly. "Good morning," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Everything's fine now. Just a long night." One of the neighbors, Mrs. Lewis, stepped forward, her expression worried. "We heard noises all night." "We didn't know what was happening," she said. "Is everyone okay?" Alex nodded. "Yes, Apache is fine now. We're both okay. It was just a bit of a strange night, that's all." Another neighbor, Mr. Patel, frowned. "Strange? We heard banging, shouting. The whole street sounded like chaos." "What really happened in there?" Alex hesitated. How could he explain? How could he tell them about shadows that moved on their own, whispers in empty rooms, and the cold that seemed alive? He could see the curiosity in their eyes, the eagerness for a simple explanation. "It's complicated," he said finally. "Let's just say it was a night full of unexpected events. The important thing is, everyone is safe now." The neighbors exchanged looks, some unconvinced, some relieved. Slowly they nodded, accepting his answer, though their curiosity lingered. As they started to disperse, whispering among themselves, Alex closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. He turned back to Apache, who was sitting quietly, his hands folded in his lap. "That was intense," Apache said softly. "I can't believe we made it through." Alex smiled faintly. "We did, and we'll be okay." The house, the night, it's over now. But even as he spoke, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The house no longer seemed like just a building. It felt alive, aware, as if it had witnessed their courage and survived it, just as they had survived it. The night had tested them in ways neither of them could have imagined, leaving a mark on their memories that would never fade. As the morning grew brighter, Alex and Apache began to move about the house. Apache, still tired but recovering, brewed a small pot of tea, and Alex helped him carry it to the living room. They spoke quietly, not needing to fill the silence with unnecessary words. The simple acts of making tea, setting the table, and organizing the room felt comforting after the chaos of the night. Once the tea was ready, they sat together, sipping slowly, the warmth of the liquid, the sunlight streaming through the windows, and the ordinary sounds of the neighborhood created a sense of peace that Alex hadn't felt for hours. It was a calm that felt earned, a reward after a night of tension and fear. "You know," Apache said quietly, "I've always thought I could handle anything. But last night, I realized that sometimes you need someone else, someone to be there with you." Alex nodded. "Exactly. We can't always do everything alone. And that's okay. We're stronger together." For a while they continued to sit in silence, reflecting on the night. Neither spoke of the shadows or the noises. Some things were better left unspoken, unexamined, at least for now. The experience was theirs, a secret shared between two people who had faced fear together and survived. Later, as the sun climbed higher, the neighborhood came alive with activity. Children ran past the house. Neighbors mowed lawns, and the world seemed to return to its normal rhythm. Yet despite the ordinary morning, Alex felt a quiet vigilance. The events of the night had opened his eyes to the unpredictability of life, the hidden currents that could ripple through the ordinary at any moment. As Apache began to feel stronger, he looked at Alex with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You risked a lot by staying." I'll never forget it." Alex smiled, shaking his head. "You don't have to thank me. That's what neighbors are for. We help each other. Tonight, I was just glad to be here for you." They shared a quiet moment of understanding. The bond between them had deepened, forged in the fire of the night's events. Alex realized that this night would remain with them forever, not just as a memory of fear, but as a testament to trust, courage, and the strength found in simple acts of care. As the day unfolded, more neighbors came by, curious about what had happened. Alex answered their questions carefully, keeping the story simple, without delving into the unexplainable. Some shook their heads, others laughed nervously, but all were relieved that Apache was safe. By mid-morning, the street had returned to its usual quiet rhythm. Alex and Apache sat together on the porch for a moment, watching the neighborhood. Birds chirped, leaves rustled gently in the breeze, and the sunlight glinted off the windows of the houses across the street. Everything looked ordinary, peaceful, almost mundane. Yet both of them knew that the night had changed something. Inside the house, inside themselves. Alex leaned back, taking a deep breath. "You know," he said quietly, "nights like this remind you how fragile things can be, and how strong people are when they face them together." Apache nodded, eyes reflecting the sunlight. "I'll never forget it," he said, "and I'll never forget you being here with me." For a long while they simply sat in silence, letting the morning wash over them, enjoying the warmth, the comfort, and the quiet victory of surviving a night that had seemed impossible. As the day grew brighter, Alex knew it was time to leave. He helped Apache settle in, made sure he had water, and promised to check in later. Stepping outside, Alex felt a sense of closure, a quiet satisfaction. The night had been frightening, surreal, and exhausting, but they had faced it, and now the light of day offered clarity and peace. As he walked down the street toward his own house, neighbors smiled and waved. Alex returned their greetings, a small smile on his face. The street seemed ordinary again, the night's chaos already becoming a story to be whispered and speculated about. But Alex carried the memory with him, the fear, the courage, the bond, and the quiet strength of facing the unknown together. That morning, the neighborhood would talk. Questions would be asked, theories proposed, and stories shared. But for Alex and Apache, the night had been more than just strange noises and moving shadows. It had been a test of resilience, a lesson in trust, and a reminder that even in the most frightening moments, human connection could be the strongest light of all. As the sun rose higher, Alex looked back once at the house. It stood silent and still, ordinary again on the surface. But he knew what had happened inside, and he knew that this night, this story, would stay with him forever. and in that quiet understanding, he felt peace.